following program is produced by Laura K. Henderson, Michael Ray Helms, and Jen Hebben, under the guidance of executive producer Laura K. Henderson, with funding provided by the Irving S. Gilmore Foundation, David Isaacson, and Theater Kalamazoo. All Ears Theater. The fog rolls off the Thames like a living thing hiding secrets in her grasp. This is 19th century London and the home to a well-regarded lawyer by the name of Gabriella Utterson, whose client and close friend has trusted her with an altered will and testament. The client? One Dr. Henry Jekyll. Miss Utterson's suspicions over the real reason for the changed will become apparent in tonight's presentation of The Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde, adapted by Greg Grooters from the original story by Robert Louis Stevenson. Featured in the cast are Pam Clerk, Tim Eschelbach, Arnie Johnston, Michael Waldschlager II, Christine Kline, Richard Philpot, Jessica Boucade, and Jake Burrell.
I say, Gabriella, do you remark that door across the street? It is connected with a very odd story in my mind.
Indeed, cousin. True, it is indeed a base door among its well-polished neighbors. It is devoid of bell and knocker. Vagrants sleep in her shadow, and vandals have carved upon her face. What story could you find there?
Well, it was this way. I was coming home from someplace at the end of the world, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and through a part of town where the streets are as empty as a church, I saw two figures. One, a little man stumping along, and the other, a girl of 8 or 10, running as hard as she was able. The two ran into each other, and
Do go on, Richard.
Well, the man, he trampled calmly over the girl and left her screaming on the ground. It sounds like nothing to have me say it, but it was hellish to see. It wasn't like a man, it was like an unholy juggernaut.
Good heavens, man, what did you do?
Well, I took to my heels, gave a view-halloo, and collared the gentleman. He was perfectly cool and gave no resistance. Among the people who had turned out to the girl's screams were her family, and apparently the doctor, for whom she had been sent. I never saw a circle of such hateful faces surrounding the man, and he stood there with a kind of black, sneering coolness. Frightened, too, I could see that, but carrying it off, really like Satan. Then he spoke.
If you choose to make capital out of this accident, I am naturally helpless. No gentleman but wishes to avoid a scene. Name your figure.
A bribe?
A blackmail, I suppose. An honest man paying through the nose for some of the capers of his youth. We screwed him up to £100 for the child's family. The next thing was to get the money. And where do you think he carried us? But to that place with the door.
Indeed.
He whipped out a key, went in, and presently came back with a matter of £10 in gold and a check for the balance. It was drawn payable to the bearer and signed with a name I cannot mention. Though it is one of the points of my story, it's a name at least very well known and often printed. A man does not walk into a cellar door at 4 a.m. and come out with another man's check for close to £100.
And the check was forged?
Well, the check was genuine. So in consequence, I call that house Blackmail House, for even that is far from explaining it all.
You don't know if the drawer of the check lives behind that door, do you?
Oh, a likely place, isn't it? But I noticed the address on the check. He lives in some square or other. I have studied this house. There is no other door, no windows except for those 3 above, and no one goes in or out, except the gentleman of my adventure.
What was the name of the man who walked over the child?
I can't see what harm it would do. It was a man by the name of Hyde.
Hyde? What sort of man was he to see?
Oh, he's not easy to describe. There's something wrong about his appearance, displeasing, no, downright detestable. I never saw a man I so disliked, yet I scarce know why.
You are sure he had a key?
My dear.
The fact is, I do not ask you the name of the other party, for I know it already, just as I know the owner of that door. Your tale has struck home, and if you have been inexact in any point, you had better tell me.
I think you might have warned me, but I've been pedantically exact. The fellow had a key, and what's more, I saw him use it only a week ago.
Let me see now. The last will and testament of Henry Jekyll, MD, DCL, LLD, FRS. Here we are. All possessions are to pass into the hands of my friend and beneficiary, Edward Hyde. Mr. Hyde shall acquire said assets without further delay and free from any burden or obligation. Poor Henry, what possessed you to leave your estate to such a detestable creature? If anyone knows, it will be our friend, Dr. Lanyon.
Miss Utterson, do come in. Care for some tea?
Good to see you, my friend. Thank you. No tea for me. I suppose, Lanyon, you and I must be the two oldest friends that Henry Jekyll has.
Well, I wish the friends were younger, but I suppose we are, though I see little of him now.
I thought you had a bond of common scientific interest.
We had, but it is more than 10 years since Henry Jekyll became too fanciful for me. He began to go wrong. Wrong in the mind. Such unscientific balderdash.
Did you ever come across a protege of his, one Mr. Hyde?
Hyde? No, never heard of him. What do you mean to do, Gabriella?
I'm aware of a familiar door, Lanyon. I shall patrol that door until I find this protege. Good day, Lanyon. Mr. Hyde, I think.
That is my name. What do you want?
I see you are going in. I'm an old friend of Dr. Jekyll's, Miss Utterson of Gaunt Street. You must have heard of my name, and meeting you so conveniently, I thought that you might admit me.
Dr. Jekyll is away from home. How did you know me?
By description.
Whose description?
We have common friends.
Common friends? Who are they?
Jekyll, for instance.
He never told you. I did not take you for a liar.
Come now, that is not fitting language. Well, he slipped through the door so unearthly fast, God bless me. The man seems hardly human. Oh, my poor old Henry Jekyll. If ever I read Satan's signature on a face, it is on that of your friend.
Good evening, Miss Utterson.
Good evening, Poole. Is Dr. Jekyll at home?
I will see, Miss Utterson. Will you wait here by the fire?
The face of that Hyde fellow weighs on my memory. Even the flames flickering in this beautiful hall cannot enlighten the gloom upon my spirit.
I'm afraid Dr. Jekyll has gone out.
I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the laboratory door moments ago, Poole. Is that right, when Dr. Jekyll is away?
Quite right, Miss Utterson.
Your master seems to repose a great deal of trust in that man, Poole.
Yes, ma'am, he does indeed. We all have orders to obey him.
I do not think I ever met Mr. Hyde in my dinner visits here.
Oh, dear no, ma'am. He never dines here. Indeed, we see very little of him. He mostly comes and goes by way of the laboratory.
I see. Well, good night then, Poole. Poor Henry. To think of this creature stealing like a thief to his bedside, and the danger of it. For if this Hyde suspects the existence of the altered will, he may grow impatient to inherit.
Good night, all. Thank you for coming. Well then, Miss Utterson, at least my guests had a pleasant time at dinner. What can I do for my friend and lawyer? A drink, perhaps?
Please. I have been wanting to speak to you, Dr. Jekyll. You know that will of yours.
My poor Miss Utterson, you are unfortunate in such a client. I never saw a woman so distressed as you were by my will, unless you count that hidebound pedant Lanyon at what he called my scientific heresies.
You know I never approved of it.
My will? Yes, certainly, I know that. You have told me so.
Well, I will tell you so again. I have been learning something of young Hyde, and what I heard was abominable. Jekyll, you know me. I am a woman to be trusted. Make a clean breast of this in confidence, and I make no doubt I can get you out of it.
My dear Gabriella, this is very good of you, and I cannot find words to thank you. I believe you fully, but it is not as bad as that. So put your heart at rest and know one thing. The moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde. I beg of you, let this matter sleep.
I have no doubt you're perfectly right.
I should like you to understand, I have a great interest in poor Hyde. I know you have seen him, he told me such, and I fear he was rude. But I do sincerely take an interest in that young man, and if I am taken away, I ask your promise that you would bear with him and get his rights for him.
I can't pretend that I shall ever like him.
Of course. I only ask that you help him for my sake when I am no longer here.
I promise I will keep watch over him. Good night, Henry.
Good night, my dear.
Yes, who is it?
Inspector Newcomen, Scotland Yard. Might I have a word with a Miss Utterson?
I am she. To what do I owe this morning visit from the yard?
This envelope was found on a murder victim in the wee hours of the night. An envelope with your name and address upon it. I was hoping you could enlighten us as to the midnight carrier of said letter.
Let me see that. I shall say nothing till I see the body. This may be very serious. I shall accompany you to the station.
Of course, Mum.
Yes, I recognize him. He was a client of mine. I am sorry to say that this is Sir Danvers Carew.
Good God, is it possible? A member of Parliament? This will make a deal of noise. Perhaps you can help us to the man responsible.
How can I help?
There was a witness, a maid. Poor thing fainted when she saw what happened. Called for us when she woke up, but of course by then the murderer was long gone. She is just in the other room. Miss? Good morning, miss. This is Miss Utterson. I'd like you to tell her what you saw last night.
I had gone upstairs to bed round 11 when I saw how bright the moon was. I sat upon the box overlooking the lane and the river below. Presently, I saw an aged, beautiful gentleman with white hair drawing near on the lane. Another gentleman with a cane approached and advanced to meet him. The older man spoke politely at some length.
And what of the other man?
He was particularly small and wicked-looking. All of a sudden, he broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping his foot and brandishing his cane. The older man took a step back in surprise, when with an ape-like fury, Mr. Hyde clubbed him to death, even broke his cane.
Mr. Hyde? The smaller man was Hyde? Can you be sure?
Yes, ma'am. I shall never forget that face. He visited my master once, and I took an immediate dislike to him.
You know this Hyde fellow, Miss Utterson?
It has been some time since I've spoken to the man. I can take you to his house.
This is the place. A rather low street.
For a low character, I assure you. This is the address. Good day, madam. Is this the residence of Mr. Hyde?
Yes, this is Mr. Hyde. He rents a room, but he is not at home. He had been in very late last night, but had gone not even an hour ago.
Very well. We wish to see his room. This is Inspector Newcomen of Scotland Yard.
Ah, he is in trouble. What has he done?
You don't seem a very popular character. Now, my good woman, just let me and this gentlewoman have a look about.
Very well. He's absent rather often with his irregular habits and all. It was nearly 2 months since I'd seen him till yesterday.
Any luck, Miss Utterson? Everything looks like it has been ransacked. What's this? He's been burning papers here on the hearth, and here, a checkbook that resisted the fire. The last check written was to Mr. Hyde for several £1,000s.
That's Henry Jekyll's checkbook. And I have something else that might help your case, Inspector. I found it behind the door.
Good heavens, the other half of Hyde's cane. I have him in my hand. He must have lost his head, or he never would have left the stick, or above all, burned the checkbook. I must return to the station with this.
Very well. I must warn Jekyll of his friend's appetite for violence and treachery. Poole, is Dr. Jekyll at home?
Yes, Mum. He's in his study.
Study? I was unaware of that room.
It is above the laboratory. This way, Mum. Miss Utterson, sir.
Thank you, Poole. Come over here by the fire, my dear. Forgive me that I don't rise to greet you.
You have heard the news about Sir Danvers?
They were crying it in the square. I could hear them.
Sir Danvers was my client, but so are you, and I want you to know what I am doing. You have not been mad enough to shelter this Hyde fellow?
Miss Utterson, I swear to God, I will never set eyes on him again. I bind my honor to you that I am done with him in this world, and indeed he does not want my help.
For your sake, I hope you may be right. If it came to a trial, your name might appear.
There is one thing on which you may advise me. I have received a letter, and I am at a loss whether I should show it to the police. I should like to leave it in your hands. You would judge wisely, I am sure. I have so great a trust in you.
You fear, I suppose, that it might lead to Hyde's detection?
No, I am quite done with him. I was thinking of my own character, which this hateful business has rather exposed.
My dearest Dr. Jekyll, you have been a true and faithful benefactor, upon whom I have so long unworthily repaid for 1,000 generosities. You may need no longer labor under alarm for my safety. I finally have means of escape upon which I secure dependence. Signed Edward Hyde? Do you still have the envelope?
I burnt it before I thought what I was about. There was no postmark. It was handed in by messenger.
Shall I keep this letter and sleep upon it?
I wish you to make the judgment for me entirely. I have lost confidence in myself.
I will consider. Now, one word more. It was Hyde who dictated the terms of your new will about your possible disappearance?
Yes.
I knew it. He meant to murder you. You had a fortunate escape.
What I have had is a lesson. Oh, God, what a lesson.
Get some rest, my friend. I will see myself out. Poole? Poole?
Yes, Mum.
There was a letter handed in today. What was the messenger like?
No messengers today, Mum. Just the usual post.
Well, thank you, Poole. Tend to the doctor, if you please. Ah, Mr. Guest, it has been a troubling day. Sad business about Sir Danvers.
Yes, it has solicited a great deal of public feeling, and here at the office as well. The man responsible was quite insane.
I should like to hear your views on that. I know you to be an avid student of handwriting. I have a document here in his hand. This is between ourselves. I scarce know what to do about it. There it is, quite in your way. A murderer's autograph.
No, ma'am, not insane, but this is an odd hand.
And by all accounts, a very odd writer.
And that other paper you have, that looks like Jekyll's handwriting.
This? Only an invitation to one of Jekyll's dinners. Why? Do you want to see it?
For a moment. I thank you, ma'am. A very interesting autograph indeed.
Why compare them, Mr. Guest?
Well, there's a rather singular resemblance. The two hands are in many points identical, only differently sloped.
I noted that the hand is odd and upright on Hyde's letter, but yes, you are correct, Mr. Guest. They are identical. Henry Jekyll, forging for a murderer. We shall not speak of this note, you understand?
I understand.
Just a moment. Can't for faith's sake believe I followed through with Jekyll's demented instructions. Yes, you don't need to wake the dead with this row, nor the sane asleep. A moment. Are you come from Dr. Jekyll?
Yes. Have you got it? Have you got it?
Come, sir, you forget that I have not yet had the pleasure of your acquaintance.
I beg your pardon, Dr. Lanyon. What you say is very well founded. My impatience has shown its heels to my politeness. I understood. A drawer?
Yes, Jekyll's letter had explicit instructions on his drawer of powders and how I was to acquire it. There it is, sir, over there on the floor. Compose yourself.
My apologies, Dr. Lanyon. Have you a graduated glass? Yes, almost there. And now to settle what remains. Will you be wise, Lanyon? Has the greed of curiosity too much command of you? Think before you answer, for it shall be done as you decide. You could command my leave and be left as you were before, rendering a service or kindness, or if you so choose, a new providence of knowledge shall be laid open to you.
Sir, you speak enigmas, but I have gone far too far in the way of inexplicable services to pause before I see this to its end.
It is well. Lanyon, remember your vows. What follows is under the seal of your profession. You, who have so long been bound to the most narrow and material views. You, who have denied the virtue of transcendental medicine. You, who have denied your superiors. Behold!
My God!
An excellent repast, Lanyon. I thank you for the invitation. I hate to say such things, but...
Yes, I can anticipate your question, Miss Utterson. I'm sure you were to comment on my haggard appearance. I have had quite a shock, and I shall never recover. It is only a question of days now. Life has been pleasant. I liked it. Rather, I used to like it. I sometimes think if we knew all, we should be more glad to get away from it.
Jekyll is ill, too. It has been weeks since we've spoken. The last time I saw him was at the dinner party we both attended, remember? It was like old times, the three of us.
I wish to see or hear no more of Dr. Jekyll. I'm quite done with that person, and I beg you will spare me any allusion to one who I regard as dead.
Can't I do anything? We three are very old friends, Lanyon. We shall not live to make others.
Nothing can be done. Ask himself.
I have. Upon my attempts, Poole would tell me that Jekyll was confined to the house and not seeing anyone, not even me.
I'm not surprised at that. Someday, Gabriella, after I am dead, you may perhaps come to learn the right and wrong of this. I cannot tell you. In the meantime, if you can sit and talk with me about other things, for God's sake, stay and do so. But if you cannot keep clear of this accursed topic, then in God's name go, for I cannot bear it.
And that, Enfield, brings us round full circle. For here we are, back at your blackmail door once more. Did I ever tell you that I once spoke to Hyde and shared your feelings of repulsion?
It was impossible to do one without the other. And by the way, what a fool you must have thought me, not to know this door was the back way to Dr. Jekyll's laboratory.
So you found that out, did you?
Yes, but is still in such a dreary visage amongst the brighter tenements. Odd. One of the windows above the door is open.
Why, it's Jekyll in his study. Jekyll! Henry! I trust you are better.
I am very low, Miss Utterson. It will not last long, thank God.
You stay too much indoors. You should be out whipping up the circulation like Mr. Enfield and me. Come now, get your hat and take a quick turn with us.
You are very good. I should like to very much. But no, it is quite impossible. I dare not. This really is a great pleasure. I would ask you and Mr. Enfield up, but the place is really not fit.
Why, then the best thing that we can do is stay down here and speak with you from where we are.
That is just what I was about to venture to propose.
Did you see his face, Gabriella? It was enough to freeze the very blood.
One moment smiling, and the next abject terror and despair. It was but a glimpse before the window was thrust down, but it was sufficient, and I can see that it was enough for you as well. God forgive us.
Thank you for coming, Miss Utterson.
I came as soon as I could, and glad of it. Dr. Jekyll hasn't spoken to me in days. Bless me, Poole, you look a fright.
Miss Utterson, there is something wrong.
Have a seat. Here is a glass of wine. Now, take your time and tell me plainly what you know.
You know the doctor's ways, Mum, and how he shuts himself up. Well, he shut up again in that study, and I don't like it, Miss Utterson. I'm afraid. The whole house, they're all afraid as well. I can bear it no more.
Come, I see you have some good reason, Poole. I see there is something seriously amiss. Tell me what it is you are afraid of.
I think there's been foul play.
Foul play?
I think you should hear for yourself, Mum. Come as gently as you can. I want you to hear, but not be heard yourself. And see here, Mum, if by any chance he was to ask you in, don't go. Miss Utterson, sir, asking to see you.
Tell her I cannot see anyone.
Thank you, sir. Follow me, Mum. Mum, was that my master's voice?
It seems much changed.
Changed? Well, yes, I think so. Have I been 20 years in this man's house to be deceived about his voice? No, Mum. Master's made away with. He was made away with days ago. And who's in there instead of him? And why it stays there is a thing that cries to heaven.
This is a very strange tale, Poole, a wild tale indeed. If it is as you say, supposing Dr. Jekyll to have been, well, murdered, what would induce the murderer to stay? That won't hold water. It doesn't even commend itself to reason.
All last week, him or it, or whatever it is that lives in that study, has been crying night and day for some sort of medicine and cannot get it to his mind. It was sometimes the master's way to write his orders on a sheet of paper and throw it on the stair. Well, Mum, every day, sometimes up to thrice per day, I have been sent flying to all the wholesale chemists in town. Every time I brought the stuff back, there was another paper telling me to return it because it was not pure enough. This drug was wanted bitter bad, Mum, whatever for.
Have you any of these papers? This is unquestionably the doctor's hand, do you know?
I thought it looked like it, but what matters his hand? I've seen him.
Seen him?
It was this way. I came suddenly into the laboratory from the street, and there he was at the far end, digging among the crates. He looked up when I came in, gave a kind of cry, and whipped upstairs into the study. Mum, if that was my master, why had he a mask upon his face? Why did he cry out like a rat and run from me?
These are all very strange circumstances, but I think I begin to see daylight. Your master, Poole, is plainly seized with one of those maladies that both torture and deform the sufferer.
Oh, Mum, do you think I do not know my master after 20 years? No, Mum, that thing in the mask was never Dr. Jekyll, and it is the belief in my heart that there was murder done.
This masked figure you saw, did you recognize it?
When that masked thing like a monkey jumped from among the chemicals and whipped into the study, it went down my spine like ice. I give you my word. It was Mr. Hyde.
Poole, if you say that, it will become my duty to make certain. Much as I desire to spare your master's feelings, I shall consider it my duty to see that door broken down.
Mom, that's talking. There's an axe on the wall here.
Jekyll, I demand to see you, if not by fair means, then by foul. If not of your consent, then by brute force.
Utterson, for God's sake, have mercy.
That's Hyde's voice. Down with the door, Poole. Foul creature! What have you done with Henry Jekyll?
Too soon, and yet too late you arrive, Utterson. My drink takes effect even now.
God's preserve us! His skin! It's swelling up. I think he's melting.
Indeed, Hyde's skin darkens even now, and his face. I can't make certain of his features at all now.
I can scarce look at him.
Good Lord. Could it be Jekyll? Henry, my friend, is this you?
Indeed, it is. Your foolish subject at last.
But, sir, how is this to be? Hyde stood there but a moment ago.
A tale which I will share with Miss Utterson here, Poole. Please be so kind as to bring a glass of wine. I'm quite spent.
Please, my friend, sit and tell your tale. It shatters the mind that you and that creature could be one and the same.
And only if it were not so, Miss Utterson. Even in my younger days, I had often felt certain proclivities in my nature that my good name could not withstand. Hence it came about that I concealed my pleasures, and I stood committed to a profound duplicity of life. I managed to compound a drug by which these powers should be dethroned. I hesitated long before I put this theory into practice, but with a strong glow of courage consumed by my first potion. As you have seen, the transformation is violent and painful.
Good God, man. Why on earth would you subject yourself to such agony?
Think of it, Miss Utterson. My pleasures were, to say the least, undignified. The cloak of Hyde could be worn or tossed at a whim, while in Hyde's form, I didn't even exist. However, those pleasures I mentioned in the hands of Hyde soon turned monstrous. There was the incident with the child to which your kinsman bore witness. I even rented the flat in Soho for Hyde to sleep in. It was in that flat that I first noticed something had gone horribly wrong. I had a typical adventure and had gone to bed as Henry Jekyll, but awoke staring at the hands of Edward Hyde.
My God, without the tincture to provoke the change?
Precisely. Now I found the dilemma of having to choose. I resolved to be free of Hyde and held fast to that promise for 2 months. But in an hour of moral weakness, I swallowed the transforming draught. My devil had been long caged and came out roaring. The next day came the news of the murder and Hyde's guilt patent for the world. Suddenly, Jekyll was my city of refuge. Let Hyde peep out for an instant, and the hands of all men would be upon me. After one of these willing and unwilling transformations, my reason wavered, but it did not fail me utterly. I contacted Lanyon and instructed him to bring my medicines to his home.
He mentioned he had a terrible fright soon before his passing. That was Hyde?
It was myself, for he had witnessed the same transformation. And while I reveled in my intellect, I saw what it had done to Lanyon. Poor fellow.
Your wine, sir.
Thank you, Poole. The time between transitions became shorter, and Hyde would be there whenever I awoke. I couldn't sleep and became sickly. Confined to this form or face the gallows, he rails against his prison even now. Yet I pity him.
Pity him?
Yes, Gabriella. I still have the wits about me to have one final draught. For now I am certain it was the first batch of salts that were impure, not the subsequent ones Poole turned London over to find for me. With it, we shall be rid of Edward Hyde for good and all. So, my dear Gabriella, I have papers on the table there for you to review. Poole, please witness.
It's Jekyll's will, just as I have at the office. But there's been a change. Instead of Edward Hyde, the beneficiary is...
Gabriella Utterson.
My head goes round. Hyde must have raged to see himself displaced, and yet he had not destroyed this document. You were using this as leverage against him, Jekyll? Jekyll?
Sir! These are not the salts I had purchased, Miss Utterson. These are...
Poison. Poor Henry took his own life to be rid of that monster for good. Truly, it was Jekyll that deserved the pity. No one should have to suffer having such demons brought to light, even though they live inside us all.
You have been listening to The Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde, adapted by Greg Grooters. The show was directed by Martie Groat, with sound engineering by Lester Betts of Sound Solutions and Martin Clem of Kalamazoo Recording. Music was composed by Hal Hobson Morse and performed by Linda Havens and Debbie Phillips. Sound effects were performed by Gary Brown and Greg Grooters. This non-profit performance was performed at KNAC and is copyrighted by All Ears Theater with all other rights reserved by the author. Any resemblance to persons living or dead or characters, names, places, or incidents is purely coincidental. This is your announcer, Jake Burrell, thanking you for listening and inviting you to visit us again for another audio theater presentation.